Hi, everybody. Welcome to your read aloud video for CR5 Causes of European Exploration. So let's get started by peeking at our questions. Looks like we're going to be looking for how many continents did Europeans think were in the world during the Middle Ages? And what name did European map makers give the ocean that bordered Europe? Remember, we always like to look two questions ahead. So we'll be looking for those questions as we get started. I also always like to preview any of the titles or subheadings. So we see the title is Causes of European Exploration. Got a picture of, looks like a giant snake or sea monster devouring a boat. And I've got for subheadings here, a changing Europe, a revival of learning, and search for new trade routes. And then this map, which maybe has something to do with those trade routes. So let's get started right at the top. First paragraph. During the Middle Ages, the period in European history from about 500 to 1350, many Europeans thought of the world as a disk floating on a great ocean. The disk was made up of only three continents: Europe, Africa, and Asia. So, right off the bat, I've already found the answer to the first question there. I'm going to grab my highlighter using my drawing tool. I'm going to make sure it's semi transparent, make it a little wider than that. This should work great. And the answer to that question was three continents. Of course, we know there were more than three, but the Europeans thought there were only three. I'm going to number that. That is the answer to question number one. And let's check that off our list here. Grab my drawing tool. How many continents? Yep, we got it. All right, so now we're looking for the name that European map makers gave to the ocean that bordered Europe. And possibly what were two things that changed conditions in Europe towards the end of the Middle Ages. Grab my highlighter in case I'm going to need it. Next paragraph. Most Europeans knew little about the lands beyond their small villages. Hold on a second. Let me make that a little bigger so you can see it. Even map makers called the waters bordering Europe the Sea of Darkness. There's the answer to that second question. Sailors who strayed into these waters often returned with tales of fearsome creatures. One of these sea monsters, swore one sailor, has horns, flames, and huge eyes, 16 or 20 feet across. Yeah, I think he's lying or exaggerating. All right, that's the answer to number two. And we'll just keep finishing. We'll finish reading this last section here. Were such tales true? The few who wondered had no way of finding out. Most Europeans were not interested in the outside world because daily life was hard and their main concern was survival. Okay, so let's check off question two. And we're now going to be looking for what were two things that changed in Europe. And also, what was the name of the wars that were fought between Christians and Muslims from 1000 to 1300? And those will be key terms to look for as we're watching for the answer to that question. Anytime we see a number here in the question, that helps us find it in the reading. So the next section is a changing Europe. Toward the end of the Middle Ages, conditions began to change. Religious wars led to increased trade with people in Asia and Africa. There was also a revival of learning in Europe. From about 1100 to 1300, Christians and Muslims fought a series of religious wars for control of the Holy Land. Thousands of Christians from all over Europe joined in these wars, known as the Crusades. In the end, however, the Europeans failed to win control of the Holy Land. So I see the answer to two questions there. Here's the two things it looks like that changed toward the end of the Middle Ages. We had, whoops, that is not what I was trying to do. Oh, there's my highlighter. We had religious wars that led to increased trade. And then it said there was also this revival or rebirth of learning in Europe. And that would be question three. So grab my text box here. And we also saw the name of these religious wars. So back to my highlighter, and they were called the Crusades. So that would be question 4. All right, so now that I've knocked off those 2 questions, let's cross those off. And we'll be looking for what were some new types of products the Europeans were exposed to as a result of the Crusades. Still, the Crusades had lasting effects for Europeans. For the first time, large numbers of Europeans had traveled beyond the small towns of their birth. In the Middle East, they ate exotic foods such as rice, oranges, and dates. They tasted ginger, pepper, and other spices that improved the taste of food and helped preserve it. So, there are some examples of products that the Europeans were exposed to. That's the answer to question 5. And we're now looking for who did Italian merchants begin to trade with to get these goods? They bought shimmering silks and colorful rugs from Arab traders. Italian merchants quickly realized that Europeans would pay handsome prices for these foreign goods. They therefore began a lively trade with Arab merchants in the Middle East. So the answer to that question would be they traded with Arab merchants. But I also noticed uh, another item kind of connected to question 5. So I'll highlight that as well. And there's your answer to question 6. Crossing that off. Question 7. What were 2 new types of instruments that made it easier to sail across water? What did each of these instruments do? So, an instrument is like a machine or an invention. We're moving on to the next page now. A revival of learning. The increase in trade led to an increase in knowledge. From the Arabs, Italian merchants learned about new instruments that made it easier to sail across large bodies of water. The magnetic compass with a needle that always pointed north helped ship captains sail a straight course. Another useful instrument was the astrolabe. This tool made it possible for sailors to determine the positions of stars and figure out latitude at sea. Both the magnetic compass and the astrolabe helped make sailing less frightening. So I need to highlight 2 instruments, and I've got them, the compass and the astrolabe. But I also need to highlight or what did each of these instruments do? So they made it easier to sail across water, but what did they do? Well, the compass helped ship's captains sail a straight course, and the astrolabe helped sailors to determine the positions of stars and figure out latitude at sea. You could also highlight this because overall, what they did is they helped make sailing less frightening because people knew where the heck they were going. All right, that is the answer to question 7? Yes, question 7. Moving on to question 8. What term is used to describe the burst of learning that took place in Europe after the Crusades? And what was another invention that contributed to this learning? Increased trade and travel made Europeans curious about the wider world. Scholars translated ancient Greek, Roman, and Arab works. They then made discoveries of their own in fields such as art, medicine, astronomy, and chemistry. This burst of learning was called the Renaissance, a French word meaning rebirth. It lasted from the late 1300s to about 1600. The invention of the printing press helped to spread knowledge during the Renaissance. It was invented during the mid 1400s by German printer Johann Gutenberg. Before Gutenberg's invention, there were few books because people had to copy them by hand. With the printing press, however, large numbers of books could be printed at low cost. All right, great. So I had the answer to question 8 and question 9. all in the same paragraph. So we'll be looking for the final two questions in the last paragraph. Why did European rulers want to trade with China and other Asian lands? And also, why did Western European rulers, kings and queens, have to find another trade route to Asia? Search for new trade routes. As trade brought new prosperity to Europe, kings and queens fought to increase their power. The rulers of England, France, Portugal, and Spain looked for ways to increase their wealth. Huge profits could be made by trading with China and other Asian lands. However, Arab and Italian merchants controlled the trade routes across the Mediterranean Sea. Western European rulers would have to find another route to Asia. So the question was asking, why did they want to trade with Asia? And I think I found the answer here. Well, it had to do with money. They were looking for ways to increase their wealth, and huge profits could be made by trading with China. That would be the answer to question number 10. And then for question 11, why did they have to find another trade route to Asia? And the answer would be because the Italians and the Arabs controlled the shortest way to get there across the Mediterranean Sea. That's something that we'll be talking about more in class. And I do want to also mention there's a lot of tough vocab words in this reading. So that could be interfering with your understanding. Make sure that you're checking out the smart words for prosperity and profits and fields and all the other smart words in this reading, because in the end, that's going to help you understand the reading a little bit better. So that is the end of this read aloud. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in class.